Second half of this show, we have in our studio some of the most handsome and beautiful people within the tri-state area, even completely around the world. Is that overstating it? But we're joined by Daryl Janney, and he has written the book called 19, and well as Kristen Jensen, a former, what can I say, Ford model? Ford model, and now she has her own photography business, as well as Mike Shaker. Mike, have you ever done any modeling?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No.
But you work with Daryl as well.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, there's so much to talk about, but first I want to talk about your book. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, it's something I always wanted to do. When I went to school at Boston University, I was a literature major, and really felt that I wanted to be a writer. But then life happened, and got involved with making money, and then got married, and put it on the back burner. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I decided to start on 19.
Okay. And now, when you say life happened, now this book is somewhat autobiographical, right?
Right.
Born and raised in the Midwest in the wonderful state of Illinois.
Yes.
Came out to the big city.
Yep.
And decided you were going to try to become a male model.
Right.
And then the book picked up from there, basically.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was, that was basically similar to my true-to-life experience. The main reason I wanted to model was to make some money, and I think I had a naive interpretation of how easy it would be, and also that I was, my age was not quite right. You were supposed to be a little bit older than that, which is why I called it 19. And it also takes place in my 19th year, which was an interesting time. It was 1982, and I didn't want it to call it a book about modeling or reference that, because I think there's more to the book than simply there's a kid that became a model. And try to just be as direct and as honest as possible and write what I thought was interesting, and not write something that met with people's expectations or had a tabloid feel to it, or that was my goal, to do something that I liked. When I started writing it, I basically threw the first 100 pages away because I was writing to some sort of ideal audience that I had in my head of what they would like, and I found out that the things that I found that were interesting, we've been pretty lucky. The people that have read it have also found that those interesting as well. So it's been an interesting process for sure.
Kristen, how did you get into modeling, and how did you start, and how did you end up at a young age in a limousine with Andy Warhol? Go ahead.
Oh boy, I was 18 actually when I was quote discovered in the Bay Area. I grew up outside of San Francisco, and it wasn't really something I wanted to do. I was painfully shy, and it was something my mother really encouraged me to do. I had sort of a stage mother.
Really?
Yeah.
So she would take you to these auditions?
She's the one that pushed me. Yeah, she's the one that pushed me to quote test with a photographer to see if I photographed well, and I guess I did. I didn't think so. I had really low self-esteem and didn't think I was really ready for the business.
Okay, you got to read the book.
Yeah, we got to get you a copy.
Okay, because I'm dying to read it.
No, it's really good.
And it wasn't, and yeah, I went to Paris. I was modeling in San Francisco maybe for 6 weeks and got picked up by an agent.
At 18 years old, you're picked up by an agent, and all of a sudden you're on a, because I was snooping about you on the internet. So I saw the interview where you talked about Andy Warhol. How old were you, and where did you meet Andy Warhol?
I was 18 years old, and it was my first limousine ride, and it was just really fast paced when I got to Europe. Everything happened really fast. My career, and I'm sure it happened like that for you too.
Yeah, how does that work? I mean, in your book, just to, and it's not strictly autobiographical, that's for the movie that's coming out. By the way, who's going to play you in the movie? Or are we a little too ahead of ourselves?
No, I mean, no, I haven't really thought about that.
Okay, unfair to ask. But in the book, you talk about going to a small college in Illinois, coming out here, living in Westport, but it was pretty much just renting a room, you know, a bare light bulb near the attic or something like that. You met some nice ladies, as I recall in the book. But anyways, you go and you would go on these auditions. And you would come in there as a 19-year-old from, you know, suburban Chicago, we'll call it. And it's like the hustle and bustle, and you're like, is anyone noticing me? Am I, you know, how am I going to break into this? Was that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty much true to life. I mean, until you actually do something and, you know, get discovered and something happens where you work with a good photographer, you're pretty much invisible. And there's a lot of luck involved, and I tried to put that into the book, that it wasn't just these people are, you know, preordained to be great models or to even be a model at all. And I tried to put the realistic, how people were treated, both good and bad, and then also how I reflected on it. And I think I brought to it a different perspective because it wasn't, it sounds similar to Kristen, it wasn't a life goal of mine. I really thought I could come and just make some money. A couple people mentioned it to me that they said, "Yeah, you could probably go there." Well, here's the picture. I don't know if we can get a close up of here. That's. I'll put it on. I'll put it on here. But if you can get a shot of that. I mean, you're very handsome guy. You're a very handsome guy here. But here you are at 19. But then you had to fly over to Milan. That was the big thing in Italy. And then you went from there to Paris, I think it was. Was that the same for you? Is it the thing is to get over to Europe?
Yeah, and I think that still exists. I'm not sure.
I think
it probably does. Yeah, it's just to get your training there and to get sort of discovered.
And that's, I don't know, they just like the kind of Ralph Lauren catalog, American, wholesome, good looks. Don't they have good-looking people over there?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they do. Yeah, they do. But I guess there was, I mean, when I lived in Paris, I lived in a pension, and there were girls from all over. I mean, there were girls from, you know, Brazil, from Sweden, it was like, you know.
Now, was there any unsavory business unfolding at this pension in any
Actually,
way?
there was not.
This is what we're talking about. No, not that anything you would be involved with, but in the pension in the book, there was some enterprise going on there.
Oh, okay.
It was it was a very cheap pension, and I think what he's referring to is the reason it was so cheap is they did have prostitutes on the first floor, which we didn't figure it out until we were there for a couple of weeks.
But no, wait, this is a novel, so this could all be, you know, not necessarily true life. Okay, I want to talk about something, and it's interesting to have this book as kind of like a touch play, because there's some, it seems like maybe it's occupational hazards of being a model. But the idea being, and it's been interesting to see you. I've known you for like 10 years or something like that. I remember you took pictures of me when that first time. So, and it's interesting for me to see you go from being in front of the camera to now being behind the camera and talking about, you know, trying to capture those images. But I can only imagine that being a model has to be at some level a tenuous, kind of nerve-wracking type business to be in. Is that fair? I'll start with you and then ask you.
Let's start with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things that I learned early on is you could go to someone in the morning that could have a perspective of you. Like I remember one time they said, you know, we're really looking for someone that's not so skinny. And I went to one afternoon and they're like, you know, you know, you're a little too heavy. You know, you go, what? Or, you know, did I just see someone this morning that said, you know, we want a guy with not broad shoulders. We want a guy, you know. Yeah. So their perspective of what they're looking for, if you really bought into it, I would imagine would drive you completely nuts. For me, I just put it in perspective and said, well, I can't be that, I can't be this. And that, you know, I put that into the book.
Yeah, it seems pretty fickle.
Yeah.
Like you go and they see the pictures and like, oh no, that's not what we're looking for.
Yeah, I think it is fickle, and also I didn't really see as being in competition with the other models, because if they're looking for a guy that has a certain look that you don't have, he's not really your competition. Yeah. And I kind of looked at it as an experience that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And I got, you know, lucky. You know, there's some of the things are within the book, in that it wasn't. it wasn't necessarily what I looked like, just being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, like you went on the train
Right.
with that guy who was doing the drugs or the alcohol, and he woke
Yeah.
up with a red eye or
Yep.
whatever, and then they're like, well, I'll go with them to the shoot, and the guy goes, oh, you look terrible, you, get out there,
Exactly.
and they took the pictures.
Just that easy, yeah.
Do you know, well, did you have a lucky break like that, or was this all
Lucky
kind of...
breaks? I had lucky, yeah, I mean, sometimes,
Not
I mean...
lucky, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
Unique.
no, I think it was very...
I think it's just like life, and we were talking about this, outside.
Yeah.
That people don't realize that it's a business. It's a real business. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like it just becomes a way of life. I mean, we just get up, we go to the shoot, we have to work, we have to go home. I mean, are there parties and are that? There probably is, but not
I mean,
really.
don't you all like date rock and roll stars?
No,
and the
I mean
Rolling
some of
Stones
them.
and
I
hang
guess
out with-
some girls do, right? I guess some of them do. It happens. I mean, it does happen. Obviously, it happens. But I think for the working model, for somebody who's really working, you have to be on your game. You have to go to bed early, and you have to get up.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to make it sound so boring, but
No.
you really do. It's really long hours, and you have to work really hard.
So then, how did that evolve from having a career in modeling, and then to want to get on the other side of the camera? Walk us through that.
I had, I'm not like Daryl. I had a really long career. I just kept going.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like
yeah.
the Energizer Bunny. I mean, like a dinosaur in my business. I just kept doing it, and it just finally just sort of wore off. I was hanging out with photographers more and collaborating with them, and they were like, "Where should we go shoot this?" And I said, "Why don't you light it like this?" And it was like I was part of the team, the behind-the-scenes team.
Okay.
And when I got into that side of things, is when
Right.
I had mentors and really great photographers that said, "You should really shoot."
Do you like that part of it? Is
I'd
it
much
more-
rather shoot. I'd much rather shoot.
Okay.
I mean, it's night and day. It's like apples and oranges.
I mean, because I see, and I see how you work with, I mean, your work is really good. It's not like set positions in a studio, but you really seem to capture the essence of the people that you're taking pictures of. Or that's what you're striving for.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you like that better than being in front of the camera, where it's like, oh, look here, look there,
I can't even tell you. I mean, the last modeling job, I financed my photography career with modeling still, so I kind of just let it kind of run its course. And then I remember in 2006 was my first year of not doing any modeling jobs.
Okay.
And that was the first time
You're
in
like,
my
I'm
adult
gonna take
life.
the money from this, but I want to do.
But I'm going
something else.
to really just put everything, all my eggs in one basket, and I'm going to stick with my career, and I haven't missed it for a minute. I have to say.
Okay, I want to get into the psychoanalytical. There's actually a couch right here. If you'd kindly just lie down on this couch. What happened with your family? Okay, now hold on. I'm gonna read
In the
some
fictional family?
In the fictional family, yeah.
Yeah.
We have a big viewing audience in Illinois, so we don't want that to get back to them. But just, I mean, and by the way, in this book, I wouldn't say it would be, lighthearted. You talk about your dad on page 174. It said, my dad had made sure that I had a memory full of really dramatic crap to draw on from whenever I would face a really bad situation. Nothing and no one could be more scary than my dad. I realized that I was safest when I was alone. Even at the age of 7, that still stays with me. And you talked about that. Now, this might be fictional.
Great character.
Yeah, great character. And I'm sure your dad's a wonderful guy and stuff like that. But you talk about that growing up, that, we were talking about this a little bit. It seems like you go between wanting the attention, be visible, be noticed, maybe acknowledged,
Right.
and maybe that wasn't happening in the home, to realizing that when I'm alone or invisible or not acknowledged, that's kind of a safe place,
Right.
because then I don't get jumped on by this fictional father. But what about that? Because it's a recurring theme in the
Right.
book.
Well, I think you bring up things that are pretty true to the human experience, where we want to be acknowledged, but we also want to be safe. And there's certain ways of being acknowledged. Like, I think he wanted to be acknowledged for his intelligence and for who he was, and didn't want to be talked down to. But as far as being the center of attention, there wasn't a big, strong desire in his mind, which was one of the things that allowed him to observe. And he really did a lot of observations of people, and maybe had a different experience than a lot of the other people that he ran into. And every person that he ran into, every model, or most of them happen to be models and male models, you get these different personalities of these different people, and he's just standing back looking at them like they're from another planet, because that's not him, because this is their absolute driven goal, is to be one of the top. I think there's a part in there where he said, I was doing something without effort that they were doing with intense effort, and it wasn't working for them. So then their perception of the main character was that he had done something amazing, where he said, well, he really just followed the directions and did what he was supposed to do. So there's definitely, I think there's conflict within life. I mean, some of my favorite books, the characters are so contradictory. Holden Caulfield in Catcher in the Rye is against his roommate for wanting to make it with this girl, and he's trying to pick up another one of his classmates' mom. And then he goes and hires a prostitute. So it's a pretty big contradiction. He has a real moral problem with someone not, giving his regards to somebody that he used to play checkers with, and yet he does. As soon as he gets on the train, he's trying to pick up, one of his classmates' moms. And there's other things, and he goes back and forth. He wants to be noticed by people, yet he doesn't like phonies and things like that.
Yeah.
I tried to be as honest as I could by looking at true experiences. And whenever I tried to polish it up a little bit, make the character look a little bit better, I found that it didn't ring true for me. And there was several parts that I went back and changed. And the people that have read it have liked that about it. That
they
feel
raw.
they're walking through. Yeah, well, some parts are.
Yeah. No, but I mean raw in a good sense.
Thank you.
I mean, you don't want to sugarcoat the experience.
No,
you talk a little bit too about this concept of white noise. That it comes back, and you'd have brief glimmers of happiness and contentment where everything seems to come together, and yet you go back to a childhood memory and it brings you right back down.
Right.
You say, I started to sink into the familiar state of sadness without boundaries, an empty pit of despair and self-loathing, as I thought more and more about how little I had on all levels. I went to church, but I felt no more spiritual than when I was 11 years old. And he goes on, I remember mumbling, I love you, as I fell deeper and deeper into a well of self-pity that had opened up beneath me. And it seems like all this time when you're striving to do this modeling thing, but it's almost like to just say, I told you I could do this, and I told you this wasn't, because, I mean, when you left school or whatever, everyone's, I'm going to New York, I'm going to be a model, I'm going to Italy, and like, well, don't come back here looking for money or something like that, because this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And so you had this wanting to succeed, but you were operating over this, well, as you put it, a well of self-pity that had opened up beneath me.
Right.
Is that a constant, maybe not, again, I'm psychoanalyzing you, but is that like this yearning for, I guess you would say, afraid of what you refer to as the white noise?
Well, I think it's a recurring theme probably with more people than we can imagine, but certainly it's a recurring theme with him. And really, the white noise is, different people have different interpretations, but I would say it's depression. And just, the futility of life as he's going through all these different experiences. And it comes at unusual times, it comes, when he's doing a shooting where it actually is one of the pivotal shootings for Italian Vogue, and he's just, basically depressed. And
and you're like, is this all there is?
Yeah.
Is this all? And then you have two books. You have Catcher in the Rye, and then you have the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And these are books that you're reading.
Right.
Zen and the Motor, that was like a used book from another model.
Yes.
Right? And by the way, these models over there, I don't know if this is what it's like in Europe, but they're very, very affectionate. Anyways, there's a page that you're quoting a book within a book, which I thought was interesting. On one page, this is page 153, he wrote, "What does it all mean?" This is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, talking about life, which doesn't have anything to do with motorcycle maintenance, for those of you scoring at home. But it says, what does it all mean? What's the purpose of this? Exactly, I thought to myself, effing exactly. But anyway, is that this is almost like an internal quest for what does it all mean? What's life really about?
Right. I mean, I think that Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance was a book that spoke to me, and I think it spoke to a lot of people, because he has the question of what's the meaning of life. And I'm not going to like spoil the book for people, but it causes that is not fictional. That's basically, that's seen as a self-help book, which I think is kind of funny, because it has all sorts of his own true life weaved into it, which is basically a journey on motorcycle across the country with his son Chris. But the reason I put those in there, because they had a big impact on me, and they still do, as far as they basically helped me to cope. They gave me a different perspective. And Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance I've read several times since that time, and it's influenced everything. You know, it influenced me to go back to school to study literature at Boston University, and you know, I focused on American studies. But what I was really looking for in every book that I felt like reading was something that was true to life, something that was real, some perspective that somebody else had that I couldn't possibly have that experience. I'd have to get in a time capsule, go to Pamplona, Spain, or go somewhere that I could never go. And that to me was so profound and gave me so much of an insight into somebody else's life that it definitely influenced me as far as the way I viewed life, and also the way that I chose to write was something that is as true to life as it can be, which should be based on a true to life experience. And Sherwood Anderson, I don't know if anybody's read him, but he wrote a book called Winesburg, Ohio. That's just a book of short stories of a town that he grew up in, and he changed the name of it to Winesburg, Ohio. Right. But the images that he's able to evoke through Winesburg, Ohio, had a huge impact on me. So people that are dead authors are my biggest influence, just because I think they were doing something that it was so difficult to do. They were showing and not telling. They were showing you a picture instead of telling you how to see that picture. If you look at a Picasso and don't get it, if you look at Picasso and think it's the most beautiful painting you've ever seen, both people are right.
Would it be safe to say that when you're looking for what is it all about, what is life all about, you didn't find it in modeling? Would you say that that's
absolutely
accurate? Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
How many kids do you have?
7.
You have 7 kids. You got married to have 7 kids, and you have worked as a contractor and a builder and things like that.
Yeah.
Is that it? Is that what life is all about? Getting married and having 7 kids?
I'm still trying to figure it out. You know, I mean, I really think that we all are, and I think that I don't think it ever stops as far as questioning and looking and learning, and just the experience of writing this book gave me a completely different perspective on, I would say, the whole world, because you know, what I see is a huge compliment of how deeply you've looked into this book and what you've pulled out of it. It's just amazing. If you and I sat together and spoke for 10 hours straight, and I tried to give you, information about what my life was like, I don't think that would be 100th of what you got from the book. It's just a great medium.
I think in essence, it's the same question that everyone asks.
Yes.
I still haven't found what I'm looking for. What's it all about? And I come at it from a Christian perspective. And my belief is that we have a God-shaped void in our heart.
Yes.
And we try to fill it with being noticed, with being, with success and things like that. But until we're at peace with God, we're not at peace, and we haven't found that fulfillment. That's what I really honestly believe. And so when I look at this, I see a young man who's searching. He's searching to, find something. The acceptance and affirmation of a distant, brutal father. Being a success in a business like modeling, where you stand above it and criticize it, yet at the same point you want to be successful just to make some money.
Right.
But finding out that once you've had that success, it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's a human story.
Right.
And I find that until you've found your rest in the Lord, the heart is restless. That's been my experience. But let me just ask you along those lines. Did you did you find the modeling business somewhat vacuous in that sense, like that you can never get, you know, high enough or the best cover of a magazine, or you feel like, wow, they're just taking pictures of my outer sense, but no one knows who I really am, that kind of thing?
That's totally what it is. It's completely, this is a shell. This is all of us. It's just physical.
Yeah.
And it's not about the inside. I mean, people don't care if you're sick or what you're thinking about or what your religious belief is or what your beliefs are or how you feel about anything, as long as you show up and you look good.
And what, like, asking the same question.
That's just the way it is.
Asking the same question. What have you found? What is it really all effing about, as you put it, according to the, you know?
For me,
yeah.
What is it all about? Oh gosh, it's finding passion in my heart and doing what I love to do. You know, going after things that I really wanted to do. Being a mother. Having my own business, you know, having somewhat of control, not being judged on what I look like. Yeah. That was huge. I guess I'm not a big fan of kids modeling because I just don't think it's the right thing to do for your kid. Yeah. To have them working, but that's
kind of objectifying them that way.
I really don't think it's a right kind of lesson for a child to grow up thinking that they're getting paid only by what they look like.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that's funny is, like, you know, you think, like, even in Fairfield County, it's, okay, what kind of house do you have? And I'm in the painting business, so I see lots and lots of houses. And it's like, no matter what kind of, you have the granite countertop, you have the nice board, you have this, you have that, there's always one that's better. I mean, if you're striving to have the best house, or to have, you know, the most money, or the best car, or all these things, or even relationships. Oh, I have the coolest friends, you know. And if you're striving for that, thinking that in the end that's going to give you satisfaction, you know, you don't always get there. Caller, can you tell us exactly what life is all about?
Yes. For the first time that I can remember that you're not the best looking person on the panel.
I know. You can imagine. I'm with my wife going, I gotta look good. Because, by the way, in your book, you talk about, oh, this guy had like a beige shirt on, but it looked untucked, and I don't think I was like, I gotta make sure I look good. All right, go ahead. I'm looking good.
You look very
I know.
good.
Do we have some beautiful people on this panel, or what?
In Los Angeles. Are you still with me, Marty?
I'm on my own.
Los Angeles, and as you know, works in the entertainment business. I've met a lot of models, actresses, but I would like to comment on Sports Illustrated's upcoming swimsuit issue, where they're actually featuring plus-size models, and which I think is wonderful. That's all I have to say to you tonight, Marty, because I'm not there to have a drink with you.
Okay, thank you for the call. What about that? I mean, as far as when the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue comes on, I read it for the articles. I know that spring is right around the corner. For me, it's like that last little help to get me through the winter. But what about that? Plus size models and that kind of thing?
I think that's pretty amazing. Yeah. That Sports Illustrated is stepping up and doing that. That's big time.
I haven't acquired that magazine just yet. My wife might have that. But caller, do you have something to add? No, that was someone else. So it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Were you ever in the Sports Illustrated?
No.
Okay, Mike. What do you bring to the table here? You're working with Daryl on this book and the website. And by the way, did we get the website up there if people want to get in touch with you? Yeah, all you got to do is Google 19 the book or Google Daryl Janney. Either one of those would be fine.
Yeah, DarylJanney.com.
DarylJanney.com.
We'll get you right to the website where you can buy the book.
Hold on, let me try. Caller, are you there?
That's me, Marty.
Hey, how are you? What do you think of the show?
Oh, pretty good, Marty. It was a pretty good show tonight, Marty. It was a pretty good show tonight. It was pretty good.
Thank you. Well, thanks for calling in. And do you recognize Christian from church?
Yeah, I do. I think he was a good man when he went to church, people's church. But I think people really want to see the world destroyed, you know? That's true for them, you know?
I think many people do find their meaning in life, the truth. You can find it at church. And if you go to the Walnut Hill Community Church at 9 o'clock or 11, they'll see you there, right?
Right, that's right, Marty, that's right.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling. Another one of my friends. Okay, Mike, what are you doing with the website, and who do you think should play Daryl in the major motion picture that's going to be in movie theaters next week?
Well, I haven't given that too much thought, similar to Daryl, but we got together in January, I think, of last year, and I was into websites and design and things like that, and had just got out of college. Wasn't feeling the job world, the corporate path, and read the book and loved it, and was just excited to have any part. I was excited to apply what I was doing with myself to put together a website, and then really get into publishing and designing the layout of the inside and the cover and stuff like that.
Great. So you designed this cover and did the whole thing?
Yes.
That's great. All right. Well, now that you're a published author, this is your first book?
This is my first book.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you find the experience difficult? Did you ever have writer's block? Did you become an alcoholic and shoot guns out of windows like impetuous authors do?
No, I've had people that I've spoken to that are other authors throw stones at me when I said to them, but I loved the experience. And I think Mike is the one that said, writer's block or not having anything to say. He couldn't imagine that would ever happen to me, because I always seem to have a story or, some sort of anecdote or something funny, which annoys a lot of people. But I really enjoyed it, and when I would write a section, about 1,500 words would be like, that'd be about the max. When I felt that everything that was around me, I just had no concept of. I felt that then I would generally be close to the way I wanted it, or good. And I don't know, a different way of writing, because what I do is I just sort of go into whatever the scene is that I'm working on.
Right.
And I kind of am like
the two dogs fighting and you threw them into the pool.
Right.
That was a good scene. How can people get in touch with you if they want to do any photography or?
Through probably the best way is through my website, which is KristenJensen.com.
KristenJensen.com. Yeah. So you Google these guys. I don't know. I'm a simple guy. I love Google. You can just go the book 19. Boom, your thing goes. Kristen Jensen. It'll come up. Yeah. Google's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Well, listen. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it, and I really like the book very much. I want to thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next week when I'm not really sure what's going to come on. We've got a rock and roll band called Three-Legged Dog, and a guy whose father was homeless for 30 years, and he wrote a book about it. So we'll see you next week, and thanks for joining us on the Marty Heiser Show. Good night.